Good morning. We are live. We made it another week. How are you, ladies?
Doing really good. Hello there. Welcome to Leadership from the Heart series. Happy Friday, right? It's Friday.
Friday, yes.
Okay.
I seem to know what days are Fridays. I don't know what any other days are, but Fridays I figured out. So I am excited to introduce you all to Dr. Carrie Elk. Carrie, oh my gosh, this is going to be such an awesome, powerful, hour that we have in front of us. So thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing great. Like you said, it's Friday and I'm here in sunny Florida, so it can't really get better.
Right?
Carrie, we're pretty close because I'm in Orlando, you're in Tampa, so we're neighbors.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Not too far.
Well, I'm excited. Dr. Carrie Elk has become a friend of mine over the years, but she also owns the Elk Institute. And what you do is amazing. And I've heard your stories, and I've interacted with people that you've helped and that you've transformed their lives. And so I don't want to use my words. I want you to share with us. Tell us your background. Tell everybody what you do. Talk about the Elk Institute, but give us a little bit of your resume.
Okay, well, let's see. I'm a psychotherapist and I've been in the mental health field for just a little over 30 years now. I can't believe it. I used to say over 20 and I had a birthday recently. I'm like, dang, it's been over 30 years in mental health. But anyways, in the past 10 years, I focused on military mental health and specifically PTSD, correcting traumatically stored memories, not just treating symptoms, but focused on correcting PTSD, simply because I was asked to do it. I never really, Elizabeth, you know the story, but I never really sought out to do that, but I was asked to help. And if I could be helpful, it's always nice to feel like you have something valuable to offer. So I learned what I needed to learn in order to help the people that were asking me, which were the military population.
So how long have you been working with the military?
Probably about 10 years now. Okay. It's about 10 years. And, I think you know the story, but everybody else doesn't. So I was asked to speak on a base. Well, that's where the Institute started, but there's a little, do you want my personal backstory, the whole thing?
Yeah. Your story is awesome. So share
it all.
Okay. Yes, I can't take credit for having a brilliant idea and doing something new. It was a little bit different than that. So, I'm a single mom. I've always been a sole parent. I'm the only parent. And I have a wonderful daughter. And I have been the sole provider and everything else the whole way. So I've been a busy lady in private practice, seeing patients and raising my daughter. And then my father got cancer and he had esophageal cancer. And I moved him into my house so that I could take care of him for what would be end of life care. And so my daughter learned how to do all kinds of things. We took care of dad and we loved him more than he's ever been loved and taken care of for the last year of his life. And my dad passed away on May 6th of 2008 here in my house alone, just the two of us, very peacefully and everything. And it's obviously very sad to lose a parent, but at the same time, if you can assist and love your loved one, and certainly a parent, they care for you your whole life, and to be able to help them through was a beautiful experience. But the strange thing is, you can imagine I had a 10-year-old, a dad in a hospital bed, and all the patients in my practice. That's a lot of people to take care of. So I wasn't taking care of me until dad passed on May 6th. So the next year was me catching up on taxes and me catching up on dentists and doctor's appointments and everything. And one of my doctor's appointments, they found a simple fluid-filled cyst on my kidney, and they weren't really worried about it. And I'm like, well, why do I have that? They're like, well, it's fine. People have cysts all the time. It'll go away. It'll be absorbed. It'll burst and be absorbed. It's fine. I went back in 6 months anyway and had myself rescanned. And what started off as a simple cyst showed up as renal cell carcinoma. But the interesting thing was that was May 6th of 2009. So it was literally the day my dad died. A year later, I was diagnosed with cancer. He died on 5/6 of cancer, and the next 5/6, I was diagnosed. And it was really strange that way. And I never had symptoms. I wasn't sick. There's no reason to ever have found that it was an unnecessary CAT scan that uncovered cancer that nobody even knew to look for. So when I healed, which is a super long recovery because it was like a big 10-inch incision and I had to be in a hospital bed and all this stuff. When I was able to walk, I just thought, looking back, I can't ignore these things that I've been shown. I can't ignore that dad died on that day in front of like here is death of cancer right in front of your face. And mind you, the very same day next year, here's cancer, but here's healing from cancer that no one knew to look for. And I just thought, you know what? I feel like I'm on borrowed time. Left to my own devices or the doctor's devices, we never would have known to look for that. So I probably wouldn't have been here. They said it would have taken about 6 months to metastasize and spread through my body, but it didn't because we found it. So when I was well enough to walk and go back to work, I literally just said, I prayed and I said, God, whatever you kept me here for, you just kind of scoop that cancer out of my way. And I feel like there's something profound here, but I'm human, so I can only think with however percent of my brain that I can think with to get the big picture. But whatever it is that you kept me here for, I'll do it. I understand the rest of my time is additional time that you've given me. You must have some reason for it. So whatever it is, I get it. It's your deal. It's not my time, it's yours, and I'll do it. And the next day or two, I got a call from Military One Source, and they're like the EAP provider for all of the military. And I went to this interview and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is sitting in a call center and supervising these therapists that are on the phone. And I'm really hyper, like the people that I work with. I'm kind of an outdoors, active, not sitting at a desk kind of gal. And I thought, what am I going to do? I can't sit at a desk in an office all day. What am I going to do with that? And I remembered, like, I promised I would do whatever it was. So I went and I ended up working for a year, listening to all the service members call in with marital issues, depression, anxiety, alcohol problems, whatever their issues were that they would need counseling for. So I got to hear what that kind of sounded like. And almost all of the issues started after a certain period of time or a certain event. And it just looked like there was a lot of problems with trauma and the manifestations of having a traumatic event. And next thing you know, I got a call from a university that was running clinical trials for PTSD and TBI in the military population. I'm like, oh, that's why I did this past year at Military One Source. So I would get the background and understanding straight from the service members. And now it's time to go to be a part of the research for the solution and the treatment of PTSD. So I went ahead and did that. But when I was doing that, I saw the things that we were testing and the protocols that we were testing wasn't really going to correct the problem. It was really nice to help manage symptoms of depression, anxiety, and all that. But I realized that I'm like, this is really never going to fix the problem. This is going to be very frustrating for people. There's got to be something more. And I kept looking into it. And one day I was asked to speak on base at the Joint Special Operations University. And I went and I spoke in front of these senior leaders in the special operations community. I told them, like, here's how you get trauma. Here's what it looks like when you're living with it. Here's how we can correct it. And if you need anything, let me know. And my phone blew up after that. They're like, hey, how come no one's ever told us I have that? No one's ever told us anything like that. Do you have to tell anyone if I come see you? And I didn't understand what that question was all about at the moment. But I said, well, no, I can't tell anybody anything because I'm a civilian provider. And they said, well, what about my command? And I said, your command and the DOD is your employer. You could work for Bank of America. You could work for the DOD, whoever you work for. I can't tell your employer anything. So all of a sudden I realized that there wasn't a safe place or a place that felt safe to those service members to get the help that they needed. I'm a civilian. I didn't know why, but for whatever reason, they seemed to be very hungry for that. So they came to my office, and after the first session with one of the guys, he was a senior Navy SEAL. He said, we have accomplished more in these 2 hours than I have in 2 years at trying to get a grip on this. And he's like, I'm so grateful. How much do I owe you? So I'm like writing up some notes, and I spun around to tell him what my fee is, and I caught his uniform. And I was like, ooh, how much does he owe me? How much does this guy in a uniform owe me? I'm pretty sure he's already paid me how many times over. So I said, you don't owe me anything. You've paid me many times over in ways that I'll never really understand. Just be well. And if you need anything else, let me know. And then this is where my institute, my nonprofit, was born, because my private practice got taken over by non-paying patients. Because word spreads fast. If a product or a service is good, and hearty, they will use it and tell each other. So I ended up having a full practice filled with non-paying patients. And like I said, I'm a single mom. I couldn't do that. So a couple of veteran couples said, we'll be your board. You've got to start a nonprofit to get in donations, because you can't keep helping these guys and not charging them without any way to support that operation. And that's where the Institute was born right there, out of necessity, meeting the needs, the unmet needs of this population. And it's just grown. And now it's been 2014, the Institute started. And that's what we do. And that's how, Elizabeth, that's how we met each other. That's a long story, but that's the whole story.
It's an amazing story. And I've known the story, and I'm still getting chills, Carrie, from what you do. And I've heard some of the stories too, where the servicemen that you have helped, I've heard their stories right there. And these are very well-known situations in the world, and what you were able to do to transform their lives and change their lives, and the way you approach that, it's amazing. And every time you tell the story, you're like, oh yeah, how much do I owe them? It's just
my whole body from head to toe reacted with that moment.
Yeah.
By the way, you're an amazing storyteller. As you were describing all the details, I was really envisioning the moment. And I'm glad you're sharing everything, because it's really important for context for those who may not have realized the work that you do and how important it is. And what brought you there, in my opinion, is very prolific, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that you felt called to do that, and that you listened to the messages that were coming through. That's very special, Carrie.
Oh, thanks. That's when people thank me. I'm like, well, listen, it's not my idea. I didn't choose. It's an honor. It is an absolute honor to serve the people that I do. I don't know that there's another population that is more deserving of my time and my whatever I have to offer. I'm so glad to offer it to them. They do everything. They put everything on the line, really, for us. And so it's really an honor to serve them. But I can't really take credit for the great idea of doing what I do. But I'm super grateful to have something valuable to offer. I think that's what a lot of people are looking for, is I want to make a difference. I want to have something of value to offer, something beyond myself. And I'm just forever grateful to have a mission like that and be entrusted with an important mission like that.
When Carrie and I met, it was, I don't think there's any chances in life. Like, I don't think there's coincidences. And as I get older in time, I look back and I'm like, yeah, I don't believe in coincidences. And so when she and I met, it was through a friend that was having a fundraising dinner, and it happened to be in Austin. And she's like, I don't know if you guys would be interested. We're like, oh my gosh, we would love to see you guys, and we want to come support something that's important to you. And they didn't even live in Austin. And so we all came together at this fundraiser dinner, and you had a couple of the veterans that were there that were helping, and they would tell their stories, and you're just like, there is some reason we have all come together. I looked around the room, and it was a very unique group of people, but then I realized, like, okay, there was some divine intervention in bringing us all together, if you will, right? And so I love your story, and especially because my brothers are military, my father is military, and understanding what they've gone through and challenges they've had, and then they have somebody like you that is there to support them. So how is the Elk Institute doing? I mean, are you like continuing to grow? I mean, I know you're so busy. I'm watching what you're doing all the time, but how are things going with the Institute and the nonprofit?
Well, the call for help and the people that need assistance never stops. And that only grows, because the more people you help and the more testimonies, like the ones you heard, Elizabeth, from, some of the PJs and Rangers and some of the guys that were there at that particular fundraiser, the more people hear testimony like that, the more people come forward for help. And of course, we never take a penny. I've never taken a penny from a service member or veteran. They never reach in their pocket or pull out their checkbook ever. I rely on sponsors to do that, people to donate to do that to my 501c3, which, by the way, is the Elk Institute for Psychological Health and Performance. I didn't even say that, but donors or sponsors to take care of these guys. So the need never stops. And as you in the time that we're in right now with social distancing and isolating ourselves, one of the things that folks with PTSD or even just veterans that are transitioning out of the military, because they function as a team. They belong to a team of other highly skilled people that are trained just like they are. And being a part of that team, they never do anything alone. There's at least a battle buddy. There's at least one other. So isolating goes against what we encourage transitioning veterans trying to find their way. We encourage them, do not isolate yourself. And now we've got mandatory isolation. So that puts even more stress on some people. And then they can't get out and do the physical things or go out hunting or go out and do the things that they usually do. The gyms are closed even, so there's just a little more stress. So I've been doing Zoom calls and telehealth kind of phone calls to tide people over until I can get to them face to face. I can't do the trauma therapy virtually, but I certainly can do the supportive therapy and the educational piece, the training and all of that. So the need only increases, but we don't always have the donors or sponsors. I spend most of my time in the trenches with the guys, not helping them and answering the call, not so much going around and doing a lot of fundraising. So we can always use donors and sponsors to sponsor a veteran's PTSD treatment. That's the part that we need help on. Veterans needing treatment, they always find me. So.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you. Renee and I talk a lot about it, how people are being impacted right now. Everybody is being impacted in a different way, right? And so we talk about extending grace and no judgment and how we're all going to emerge out of this. You bring up a really good point, because that was one question I had. I'm concerned, not even just the veterans. I wasn't thinking just specific like that. I'm thinking about social mental health and depression, and those that are already suffering, or those that may, because their business has failed or they don't know how to make ends meet. But you bring up a really, really good point. People that are already suffering in one way, this could trigger things. This could add a bigger need down the road. And so you're going to be in I hate to say in much more demand, but your services are going to be required. And so, especially with our military. So I hadn't thought of it that specifically. So I'm really, really impressed with what you're doing, and that you're still able to virtually help them in some way, and still be.
We'll never shut the doors. I'll never not answer the call. Yeah. For sure. Yes. And you bring up a good point. Just mental health in general. Just everybody's mental health. These are times where there's a lot of anxiety. I would say is probably the prominent thing that people will be experiencing, because by definition, anxiety is about uncertainty of what's to come. Anxiety is being anxious about, or nervous about the uncertainty and what's ahead. Depression's about the things in the past. Anxiety is apprehension about what's to come. And the more uncertain what's to come is, people want to know what's going on. They don't like to be shocked or surprised or the rug pulled out from under them. So just by nature of these times, anxiety is being experienced by people that don't usually experience anxiety. Some people struggle with anxiety or prone to anxiety, and they know they have techniques usually by the time they're an adult to manage some of that, But there are people who've never experienced anxiety now experience anxiety, and it's very foreign to them. And then they get anxious because they don't feel like themselves, and they're just a little more antsy and apprehensive about things. But understanding that anxiety simply is not knowing what comes next or worry about what's coming next. And these times, we don't know exactly step by step how things are going to go. We don't know how this ends up in the end. So focusing on just what's right in front of you, like today, and picking just a couple of things to get accomplished today, because that's what you have. That's all you can act on anyway. That's all you have any control over, is what you do next right action. and that's it. So when you start to think about tomorrow and next week and 2 months from now, what's going to happen to my business? What about my finances? What am I going to do about the kids not being in school and all of that? And it can be very overwhelming and cause anxiety.
Even just before we came on, the three of us together today in Florida, our governor was speaking in Jacksonville, so about an hour ago, and much of their discussion they were sharing was he and a pediatrician, and they were talking about this very topic of more specific to children, of course, but the anxiety levels that children are having and how it's affecting the children. So with your work with the veterans, do you see correlations overall that there's steps we can take, whether it's a veteran or anybody that's experiencing this pandemic, even the kids, because there is uncertainty. They've had everything ripped out from underneath them, the children have.
Yeah, we're homeostasis is what we all gravitate to. That's why it's so hard to change habits, because we usually default to our baseline, and homeostasis, just sameness. And all of a sudden, sameness is not happening. Your usual, everybody's normal has been completely disrupted. And so not being able to have a grip, we all like to feel like we have a sense of control. Oh, it's Tuesday. Here's what happens on Tuesdays. Well, guess what? Those things are closed and you can't go there. And it throws people off of their routine. So establishing a routine, like really structuring your day, is something that's important to have some structure. Because the other part of that is people go to school, children go to school, or people who go to work, their days are usually structured for them. You have a meeting at this time. Then you go through your list of things, and you have these anchors that structure your work day. And now people are working on their own from home, and there's not that built-in structure sometimes, and they don't really know how to do that. I've been self-employed my whole life, so I've always had to do that. But there's actually a veteran. I like to give him props because he's a brilliant businessman. He did a really great job transitioning from being a recon Marine to a business owner. And he spent a lot of time with a really good business coach to learn how to structure the business, because it doesn't matter what your service or product is. If you understand the business and the framework, you can be successful. And his name is Will Hinkson. And he did a really nice job of laying out his structure, how he structures his day through this time. And I've shared it many times in the past few weeks, because he's done an excellent job. And I can actually share that if you want to post it underneath this. If you can.
Absolutely. We would love to post that in the comments.
Yes. And I think that's a place to start into how to handle all of this, because then you kind of do know what's coming next, because you've decided what's in your day, and you can decrease your anxiety a little bit. You make the structure. For example, he said when he wakes up in the morning, he doesn't touch his phone. There's no text, no email, no looking at any of that. The first thing that he does is that he does his meditation or whatever it is that you do, just to get yourself ready for the day, and some stretching and things like that. And then he makes breakfast for his family. And not until he gets through these self-care things and these focused things does he even engage in that. He'll do a workout, and then he has a block of time for emails and phone calls. Then over lunch, he'll get on social media while he's eating his lunch. Really nice structure so that you're productive. Because if you don't structure your time like this, when you're not used to that unstructuredness, you can be very unproductive at the end of the time. You can come to the end of this and say, I've been at home for weeks and weeks, and what have I accomplished with the extra time? Well, if you don't structure it, it's not going to happen. So he's got a really good layout there. And I know I put anchors in my day. I have 30 minutes in the morning that no matter what, first thing, before I can talk myself out of it, I go outside and do a power walk and sprint, whether I like it or not, no matter how hot it is. Before I do anything with my phone, before I look at anything else, I head out the door. Then at 4 o'clock, a friend does an online workout. She's my favorite LA Fitness instructor. So at 4, I stop for 30 minutes and do that. And then in the evening between 7 and 8, I have prayer time. It sounds really crazy, but I rollerblade on the trail and I pray for all of the people, leaders and all the COVID situation and everything like that. So I have those 3 anchors, and in between is when I do my patients and, sessions and everything. So I can give that to you, but structuring your day is one thing for sure.
Carrie, I just wanted to let you know too, we have a comment on LinkedIn from Lisa Soloway. She's a real estate investor and realtor. She's asking she says, you have a great organization. She's loving following along. And she asked if we'll post the link. She'd like to make a donation, which we will absolutely do that. So thank you, Lisa. I just wanted to say thank you
so
for
much.
commenting. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, and when Renee and I have been talking about different leadership and leaders that we're surrounded by and leaders that have emerged, you've been one that has come up in conversation so many times. And I kept telling Renee, I was like, you just got to hear her story. I can't do it justice. But again, just hearing it again from you, it's just amazing to me what you're doing, that the impact you're making in each person's life. And again, being from a military, being, surrounded by military, I understand the challenges and the struggles that they face. I mean, I don't personally, but I see it as a family member, right? And so just the life-changing support that you're providing, it's just, that is, to me, it encompasses what we're talking about as far as leadership from the heart. I mean, you are just giving all the time, and I love being surrounded by people like that. It just makes the world a better place. And I just keep thinking about how much bigger your role is going to be coming out of all this, because you're not just focused on vets in Florida. I mean, you're all over the country. There are times where you're flying here and flying there to go support people. Like, you are visible, you are there, you are right next to them, right? And so how is that going to change? Are you going to be able to get back to that? Are you trying to structure? I mean, I know Zoom goes so far, or video conferencing can only go so far. How are you going to, are there any pivots or changes that you're trying to implement to make that still a successful arm of your?
It's already happened. So yesterday I got a call. Hey, Dr. Elk, we know it's super short notice and probably not possible, but we have a group deploying. Is there any chance that you can come here in the next 3 weeks? And I said, sure, I can do that. I got 3 different requests yesterday to work with groups on site. So things are reopening.
Going.
What's that?
You're still traveling and going and seeing.
I haven't until now.
Okay.
If I was asked, I would, but there was a period of time where the veterans groups, for example, that, just a blanket statement. I've learned that if you really ever want to help people, if you really want to be helpful, you have to adapt yourself to be helpful to those people. You have to learn the culture, you have to learn the language, you have to learn what works for them, what doesn't work for them, and change what you do to meet their needs. You can't just bulldoze people like, well, this is the kind of help that I offer, take it. I think that's why a lot of people don't like, I'm just going to go ahead and say it's why some of the guys that I work with don't like to go to the VA, because they say, I have to go into this foreign environment with someone who has no idea what I do for a living. They don't even know what my job is. They don't understand what my career field does. And they go through steps 1 through 20. So I've learned that
they're just checking off boxes.
Or like, you treat that person the same as you treat somebody else, like a person that's like a suburban housewife that has anxiety. And then you have a combat special operations veteran that has trauma from doing his job. You don't use the same approach with both of those people. Both of those people need to be talked to differently. Their culture is different. They're comfortable with different things. So a lot of the time when I do what I do, sometimes I'm out in the middle of the woods at a hog hunt, and I'm wearing jeans and Timberlands and a flannel, and I'm using a cabin on the end of the campground as my office. Or sometimes I'm climbing mountains with these guys, or wherever they need to go. So I learned to change me. I'm like, okay, so what works for them? What doesn't work for them? What's holding them back? What don't they like? What do they like? What do they feel disrespected by? And just keep adapting. And I think that holds true for all of us. I think if you do that every day with your clients in real estate, how do they need me to deal with them? What do they need? And I'll change my approach according to my client. So that's the thing. So some of these recreational groups haven't been able to take veterans out to do things just because the laws and the social distancing and all of that, and a lot of the facilities have been closed. And then the military bases weren't allowed to have somebody from out of town come onto the base. In fact, the bases had fewer people than usual. They just had essential jobs on base, too. Yeah. So now those things are starting to change, and the needs coming in, and I'm going to start traveling. It's going to be a lot, because of the time that has passed that people had to reschedule. So I'm getting ready to get really busy.
Carrie, the lesson that you're sharing is such an important lesson for everyone to really take note of. It's a true foundational leadership lesson, right? I mean, it's understanding who you're working with, who you're serving, who you are trying to earn a relationship with, so that you can take the service level you're providing and make sure it's appropriate to what their needs are. So while what you're sharing still, it's giving me goosebumps because I'm just so impressed and so inspired by the way you're serving the community in this country by providing this service. I hope you realize that there's so much wisdom in what you're sharing because it applies and cascades out to anybody who's seeking more guidance as to how to be a strong leader. You're a leader. I agree with Elizabeth. You talk about leading from the heart. Dr. Carrie Elk right here. You're just inspiring and so grateful that you're sharing all of this.
Well, thank you. It's very humbling. I read the other day, one of the veterans was saying that they were having a hard time finding their purpose after they got out of the military, which is hard. I mean, you're in a very esteemed place. You've earned rank, you get a specialization, people seek you out. And now all of a sudden I'm out of the military and I can't find my place. I go home and I try to fit in at home, and my wife's been doing everything on her own all these years. And now I try to intervene and be the leader of the house, and I'm doing everything wrong. And I started thinking about, how do I answer his question on helping him find his purpose? And this goes for all of us too, is why I'm bringing it up. I read an article and it was really a great idea. It's a place to start. And it was talking about finding what is it that nobody else wants to do, or people really don't want to do, don't like, or struggle with doing, the chore that somebody doesn't want to do, the job somebody doesn't really want to do, and find the one that you don't mind as much. And that can be your niche. And that can be a place where you can meet an unmet need. And then you'll become the go-to person. And then you can lead doing something that people are very grateful for and is very meaningful to them, because it's not something that people like to do, or they struggle really hard to do it. And it's not that bad for you, kind of thing. And I thought the article was written in veteran form. It has language in there, goes along with the whole culture. So I'll spare the title of the article, but the concept I thought was really great. I thought about that. I'm like, that's so true. I'll change myself and go out and help these people. And if we all, learn to do that, that's a good place to start. What don't I mind too much that other people really don't want to do? What are the parts of that job that are undesirable? And that's a great place to find your niche and to lead ahead.
When we've met in the past, you always have some of your success stories with you. And I'm just honored to know them and honored that they've served our country. But then when you hear the story and what they've gone through, it's pretty overwhelming, right? And I felt a sense of guilt, on behalf of what they were doing for me, for us as our country. And it's so fun to see you next to these big old guys, because Renee, you might not be able to tell. Carrie's like this little petite thing, right? Long hair, little petite thing, and then she's next to these big military guys, and it's just, it's just amazing to see the admiration and respect that they have for her, because she has changed their lives. Are there any stories that, I know some of the stories that these vets shared that were just, I still don't even have the words, but are there any stories, you don't have to use names or things like that, that really tugged at your heartstrings, or that really was something that you're proud is the wrong word, but lack of a better word, you were,
fulfilled?
Yeah, that you were able to help. Is there a story that you can share that really sticks out in your mind?
Oh gosh, there are so many. And they all really
things like that. I don't want anybody to be uneasy, but anything general you can share, but it's pretty impactful what you've been doing.
Sure. Let me think about that. They all kind of pull at the heartstrings, because one of the most amazing things about being in the position that I'm in and being afforded the opportunity that I have to work with people the way that I do is to see them have the courage to come to the place where they're ready to deal with, whatever happened was bad enough the first time it happened. And to have the courage to come forward and do what needs to be done to get that archived into the past, so that they're free to live in the present and the future without dragging all of that along with them. the courage just overwhelms me sometimes. I have to be careful not to tear up. you know, sometimes after the session I will, and I'll just say, that was just your courage and your willingness to go through all of that just to get it behind you is just, blows me away every time with these people. So I'm trying to think of a story.
Do you remember the stories that the two, well, I don't want to say names, but the one story that he was there with us with the helicopters?
Yes, that one's been published in the,
Okay.
that there was an article, a public article about that one. And that was just 2 years ago. And there was a group that were deployed, and they were PJs, pararescuemen, and they do very difficult, rescues and recoveries. They do them here, but they also do them while deployed. And they were flying, and they fly in a certain formation with one kind of lead helicopter and the other one a little bit behind it. And they were flying, and they ended up, the first helicopter crashed into some wires and just fell to the ground in a ball of fire. And because what the PJs do as a job are the rescue and recovery, the second helicopter had to land and recover their friends from the burning helicopter. So you can imagine, well, you probably can't imagine, just like I can't imagine, although they've told me the story in great detail, what that would be like. But they couldn't land right away. This helicopter could not land right away. So you've got this burn. They watched this explosion next to them, realized it was their friends, their other teammates. It goes to the ground. They look down and see a ball of fire, but they can't just land immediately because they've got to, there was ammunition on there and different things like that. They just had to make sure it was safe to land, to do the rest, do the recovery. And so the time in the air, just circling and waiting to land, you can imagine, you're like, just get me down there. I just want to get down there and get to my friends. And that's what you heard from one of the service members. And he was one of them. And he was like, oh my gosh, just get me on the ground. So after they came back from that, the commander actually brought them back within like 72 hours later. He flew them home from the Middle East back to me so that I could start helping them with this obviously traumatic event. And he kept getting stuck. So when he would tell the story or go through the story in his mind about, we were flying one night and then this happened, he got stuck. Every time he talked about the circling and looking down, just wanting to get down there and get to it, he would get so overwhelmed. He was so distraught. He was right back there in the moment. He wasn't just telling me a story. He'd get to that place and you could just see it, visceral response. And he was so distraught. He couldn't get past that part. That's how I know there's a traumatic part to a story. When somebody gets stuck, you'll hear people tell a story and they'll say, well, this is what happened. This is what happened. And then just give me a minute. And when they get stuck, when they have this visceral response to something that happened in the past, I know it's traumatically stored, as opposed to somebody who can get through a very sad or tragic story and they can get through it. That means that there's not that splinter. But anyways, so he came into my office and I said, would you like me to help you with that piece right there that you get stuck at? And he really needed some help. I think he told you, that he really, in those days following that wasn't getting better. That piece of the story was getting worse. He felt like a downward spiral. So we sat for about 40 minutes and I helped him reprocess that section of the story so that it became smooth like the rest of it. No less horrific, no less tragic, but he could run through that and he didn't get stuck on that plane. He didn't get stuck circling. It was part of the story because it happened. There's no reason to have a physiological visceral response in 2020 to something that happened in 2018, and when somebody has a traumatically stored memory, that's exactly what happens. You think about the past and you have this visceral response or reaction today that doesn't really belong in today. So it took about 40 minutes and we smoothed that piece out for him. And then it was a cohesive story. And as he walked out of my office, that he kind of like, I don't know how he described it when he talked in that small group in Austin, but they sometimes say it was like I was carrying around this heavy rucksack full of metal objects banging into my side all the time. And I just was able to lay it down and walk away from it. we kind of smoothed that part out for him so it was the same volume as the rest of the story. And he and his wife and their baby, they have a beautiful baby. They volunteer for the Institute, and he likes to tell his story to encourage others, to encourage other people to get the help that they need.
What's amazing about what you just shared is you just told the overview, like the big picture of that story. When we were there with him, and I think they were engaged at that time. I don't think they were married yet, and she was sitting next to him. He's a big, buff guy, good looking, sweet as can be. But when he told that story, he didn't leave details out. He told very specific details to the point where we are all just like holding our chair, not believing that he's able to just share like he did. And that's what opened my eyes to the power that you have, and not power as an ego thing, but you are so gifted and talented with what they need. When he told those details in such a way that we can't even breathe. I mean, I'm remembering it now, right? So now I'm even kind of tense, but he was able to tell it and not flinch, right? That's when you know, oh my gosh, this could have destroyed his life. He talked about that, going into a downward spiral. And, you know, he had his whole life, his fiance was there, and now this baby, like this whole life was in front of him, but that's not the direction he was going into. And so for you to be able to sit there and have such a powerful impact on this one person, and that's just one story, it's incredible. And so I know they are incredibly grateful for that, but I'm incredibly grateful that there's a resource for our vets like that, for our veterans that have served us. So thank you for your service to them.
Oh, like I said, it's an honor. It's an honor to serve them for sure. And they're just precious. They're just such a sweet family. And, you know, the people that I work with are not mentally ill. That's another thing that's a big, big important point that I'd like to make is that PTSD is not because of mental illness. It's due to a traumatically stored memory. It's an information storage issue. And the symptoms that manifest are mental health type symptoms, but it's not because somebody's mentally ill. The people I work with are smarter than all of us combined right here, more resilient than we are. And they're just high performers, just beyond. I mean, they're chosen and selected because they are able to adapt and overcome and everything. And I love how people like that are so health oriented and performance oriented, which is why I called my institute Psychological Health and Performance, not mental illness, is because they know when something's not functioning right. Like healthy people know, hey, I'm not acting right. My response to that's not good. I'm not thinking right. I better get this fixed. That's a sign of health. That's a sign of strength. And that's not a sign of weakness or illness at all. If you have something going on that you're not thinking right or responding right, and you keep going like that, that's unhealthy. Healthy. I always say, I see healthy people who say, hey, can you help me out? Something's not right. Healthy people seek help because they want to be psychologically healthy and they want their performance to be the best that it can be. So it's never a sign of weakness or illness. In fact, I think it's the opposite when people come forward. And like you see, nobody on the outside would know that that guy was struggling with anything, but he knew that he was. And being health conscious and performance conscious, he came forward like that. And that's a general message, not just for veterans and service members, but for everybody. I do treat civilians when I can. My main focus is military, but I can treat civilians as well in my private practice, which is just very small now. But trauma, you don't have to live with that. You don't have to learn to cope with symptoms every day, waking up and going through all these mental gymnastics, or certainly take medication for the rest of your life to keep the trauma at bay. We can correct the way that memory is stored. It takes hours, 2-hour session. If it's an accident or something like that, to reprocess that memory, it'll always be bad or sad, but it will be in the past. You can live today without dragging all of that into the future. So I'd encourage people, anybody who has trauma that's holding them back or thwarts where they can go, what they can do, or their relationships or their dynamics, we can fix that.
That's a very important reminder too right now for everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone to know that there's hope to focus on that help. We have an important question to ask Carrie.
Okay.
And I'm super excited for your reply because wow, are you filled with a ton of heart. What does leadership from the heart mean to you?
Ooh, wow. What does leadership from the heart mean? I think really from my perspective is when I surrendered to myself and I was willing to use what I have to serve those who needed it, whether I understood them, what I understood what that would entail or require of me. I think that's when it was, when it was, how can I be useful? How can I do something for other people? And I think that that's what that's about. And just looked at what I have. I'm good at what I do. I'm not good at a lot of other things, but I'm confident in what it is that I do have to offer. It's not everything, but it's something. And to just pay attention and see who needs that and where I could be most useful. I think that's what it is to me.
Aww.
I think that sums it up. You are such a blessing. I'm so glad to get to see you and that you came on with us today and shared your story and your gift and an important message. And so thank you for that.
Thank you for having me. This has been really nice. It's been really fun. It's good to see you again. And it's nice to meet you.
Yes.
great to meet
And
you.
so tell everybody, I know we have the link. Thank you, Renee, for posting that, but tell everybody how they can contact or connect with you if they'd like.
You can go to elkinstitute.org is my website for the nonprofit. And we're working on the new website for the private practice. So right now, everything is going through elkinstitute.org. And I'm the only person that will read any emails that are sent. And I'm the only person that will hear any messages that are left just for confidentiality's sake. And I do want to give a shout out to Lisa Salloway because her son is one of our special operations PJs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I didn't want to let it go without shouting out to that military mom.
She's following us along today on LinkedIn, so that's wonderful. So great to hear.
Yes.
Well, Carrie, thank you. I look forward to seeing you soon, my friend. Thank you for all the great you're doing in the world.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.